broadcasting from downtown Des Moines here in the Skywalk in the Webcast One live studio as we kick off another week here on the Fallon Forum. Happy Monday to everybody. It was a great weekend, was it not? And not a bad Monday as well. I'm talking weather-wise. Otherwise, it's a mixed bag, and today's program will reflect that mixed bag. I got so much ground to cover here before I go to my first guest. I don't think it's going to happen, but excited to have Matt Sinovic joining me in the program today. He's with Progress, Iowa. And if you have not seen the Branstead on board decals in car windows, I predict it's going to happen soon because those things are classy. My only complaint, I did not see any of them designed to fit bikes. Anyway, not that I can hit 90 miles an hour on my bike, but one can still dream. We're also going to talk with Brian Gillette today about the Affordable Care Act, get his perspective on that, but plenty of ground to cover before we get to either of those guests. And I want to start with a reflection I had this morning as I was reading the news about this study on televisions. Televisions are apparently more of a hazard than you knew. Not all of us. Many of us believe that watching too much TV is bad for you. I mean, I don't even have a TV. My kids grew up for the first 10 years without one. I think that served them pretty well. But even if you like TV, most people will agree that watching too much is a bad idea. You know, and I've often said that the three worst inventions ever created in modern times, and maybe you can think of some worse ones in older times, boiling oil, the catapult, the rack, who knows? But in modern times, the three worst inventions, in my opinion, are, in order of severity of destruction, the atom bomb, the cars, and televisions. And I've always thought, cars obviously kill a lot of people every year. Nuclear bombs, did not go over very well in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and we could still see more of, the potential for fatalities from a nuclear weapon, huge. But, you never think of television as kind of a directly killing people, but apparently there is now information available in today's Pediatrics magazine, data basically collected from hospital records showing that 17,000, I was shocked, 17,000 children end up in the emergency room every year because a television falls on them. That's a 126% increase since 1990. So the incidents, the dangers of your TV falling on you, or more particularly on your kid, are up 126% in the past couple decades. It's really a little funny in a way because it's so bizarre. But of course, if you're one of the 17,000 parents bringing your kid to the ER because a TV fell on him or her, it ain't real funny. And it's not just like there's injuries. I mean, there are fatalities. In fact, one kid dies every 3 weeks from a TV falling on him or her. Again, bizarre. Maybe this is a safety issue that the federal government should think a little bit about. I'm not sure why so many more TVs are falling on kids, but anyway, it just reminded me how happy I am not to have a TV in the house. I don't have a kid around that could accidentally get squashed, but I can see one of those big old flat screen TVs sitting up on my table, and I could just see that falling on my cat one day and just sending my poor feline off to Story County Veterinary Clinic where Kim Holding would have to work her magic to fix that little cute beast up. Anyway, okay, that's on my mind just because it is so freaking curious. But we've got more to talk about. I mean, that's bad news. There's some good news to talk about. Here's the good news. The good news is that Governor Branstead is polling 37% in terms of Iowans who think he should run again for governor. That's really cool. I mean, that's excellent news. I mean, I know if you're Branstead, it's not good news. And if you're all of the special interest groups that Branstead pretty much makes a living supporting, that's not good news. But from my point of view, as I look at who's got to be the worst governor in Iowa history, he's also the longest serving governor in Iowa history. And he could be the longest serving governor in the U.S. ever if he gets reelected. And I'm thinking that, maybe this is finally the time when people, come to their senses and say, we've had enough of this guy. And, we've presented lots of reasons as to why, why this is, why this governor deserves to be sent out of office. But apparently he's probably going to run again. And we'll see what happens in the Democratic primary, or if a primary opponent in the Republican side comes up. Anyway, here's this again. Every day there's something that comes up. Now Iowa senators are questioning whether Branstad's a letter that he wrote regarding Orascom, whether that obligates the state to another $25 million. If I wrote a letter and it accidentally put me on the hook for $25 million, I feel pretty bad about that. And apparently that's what's being alleged here. 2 Iowa senators, I presume they're Democrats, because I imagine that most Republicans wouldn't challenge a sitting Republican governor. But they're alleging that Governor Branstad sent, or actually it happened. They're questioning whether this letter that Governor Branstad sent to Orascom, and again, Orascom is the Egyptian fertilizer company that is, if you add all the public money together, tax dollars from the state, from local sources, from federal sources, all the tax dollars combined, look at $251 million for one company, creating, a little over 100 jobs. And these come out to like $1.5 million per job. I would love to be able to pay, my employees, Maddie. I would love to pay Maddie $1.5 million. Even if I spread it over 10 years, she still think that was pretty darn good wages. All right. It boggles the mind to think that somehow a governor can think that's an intelligent investment. So it gets worse, apparently, because the question is now, is that letter from Branstad to Orascom obligating the state to provide an additional $25 million more in tax credits? Okay. The Economic Development Authority last week, just on Friday, they agreed to boost the tax credits to Orascom, and that pushed the state's total tax credits to the company to $82.5 million. Again, that doesn't include all the other stuff from, flood relief money, from local property tax relief, tax increment financing. So, again, this is hands down the most any company has ever received from the taxpayers. But I guarantee you this: before the end of the year, Branstad will find some other company to give at least as much to, because once you raise the bar that high, there ain't no going back. Businesses see that. They say, well, we're at least as good as this company. And again, they're only creating it's less than 150 jobs. I mean, even Wells Fargo, which got $10 million from the Iowa Values Fund 10 years ago, at least said they'd create 2,000 jobs. And we're settling for such a paltry number of jobs for huge amounts of money. Again, 10 years ago, Wells Fargo had to commit to 2,000 jobs. What happened just a few weeks ago? Facebook got $18 million, almost double of what Wells Fargo got directly from the state, and they only have to create 31 jobs. It boggles the mind that this stuff happens, that he can get away with this stuff. Okay, so enter Senator Joe Bolcom. He's an Iowa City Democrat, and he says the governor and director, Debbie Durham, that's the director of the Economic Development Authority, are basically making commitments that require the board to approve them. I have not been able to read the letter entirely, just the excerpts from it here, but also the other state senator who was challenging this, Steve Sodders from State Center, he questioned whether the letter could open the state to a lawsuit if the board decided against providing the incentives. Good question. The problem with that is there is no way this board will not pony up more money. I mean, this board is just a hand-picked, cluster of corporate elites that are just dying to give my money, your money away to anybody that Branstad deems appropriate. So yeah, it's a great theory. I would love to see us have a chance to actually test it. But for that to happen, the board would have to decide not to pony up more money. So I guess, if you still need a reason why Branstad should not be governor, here's another one. He just wrote a letter that cost you $25 million. And not $25 million that you might think, okay, there's some good out of this. No, $25 million for an Egyptian fertilizer plant, already getting $251 million for less than 150 jobs in the very southeast corner of the state. Not that they don't need jobs down there, but when I say in the very southeast corner of the state, think of this. People coming from Illinois, people coming from Missouri, how many of the people working at Horoscope, how many of these 150 jobs will actually be Iowans? Again, it just boggles the mind. It absolutely boggles the mind. All right, so let me bring up a couple other things here. The Iowa Utilities Board. This is a very important board, a very powerful board, and actually a board that, if you get to serve on it, pays you a really, really good salary. I think $120,000 a year. And at least under Vilsack and Culver, there was some semblance of balance. I would say even more so under Culver, to give him credit there, than under Vilsack. It's always been a board that's fairly friendly to the utility interest. Again, we have a utility monopoly in this state. You have Mid-American that divides a big chunk of the state. Alliant gets the rest. A few little pieces are carved out for municipal utilities and rural electric cooperatives and whatnot. But by and large, we have a utility monopoly. We have a system here that allows for monopolies. The idea being that they'll behave themselves because we regulate those monopolies through this utilities board. Unfortunately, what happens? The governor appoints the people to that utilities board, and they are almost invariably friendly to the industry, especially when you have a governor like Branstad, who is in the back pocket of Mid-American Energy. So, when a board member retired last year, Branstad appointed. I don't think it was a retirement. I think it was. I'm the governor now, and I'm going to make new appointments. He appointed Swati Dandekar, and that was, that's great. She's a Democrat. Balance. Well, Swati Dandekar is a Democrat who is also in the back pocket of Mid-American Energy. You don't have to. I mean, being willing to carry water for Mid-American is not a partisan thing. Think Mike Gronstall and the attempt to build a nuclear power plant in the state. Okay, so Dandekar resigns despite just being appointed, despite having a very lucrative salary. She resigns because she is going to run for Congress. Fairly competitive race opening up on the Democratic side in Northeast Iowa to fill the seat being vacated by Bruce Braley. So Dandekar resigned, and lo and behold, who would Governor Branstad appoint to the utility board? Well, he appoints a gal named Sheila Tipton, who I had not heard of, but apparently she is a shareholder at the Bell & McCormick law firm and has represented utility companies and developers on rate making, rulemaking, and other issues that frequently come before the utility board. So basically, she's come before the board to make the case for Mid-American Energy, and now she's on the board. Can you say a revolving door? I can't think of a more blatant example of the revolving door between government and industry than that. But that's the governor's appointee. That's who he came up with as the best person to make sure that the utility board operates in a fair manner. He appointed somebody who actually has represented the utility board before. Represented the utility company before the board. All right, so if you still needed another reason to agree with the 37% of Iowans that say, well, actually the 54% of Iowans who say Branstad should not seek another term, there's another reason for you. And again, we saw how many people opposed Mid-American's attempted nuclear power grab, a grab that would have cost the 600,000 Mid-American ratepayers $2 billion at least. We saw how bipartisan was the opposition to that. Well, again, you ought to be just as appalled at him appointing a Mid-American, essentially, let's say a lawyer that basically represented Mid-American, appointing that person to the utilities board. I hope the state Senate has the guts to say, hey, this is not acceptable. We're not going to vote for this person. But again, knowing how many Democrats are also in Mid-American's back pocket, that may not happen. All right, I want to thank the Iowa chapter of the Sierra Club and Iowa Physicians for Social Responsibility for sponsoring the Fallon Forum. And I want to thank Gateway Market and Cafe for sponsoring this segment of our show. Gateway got my favorite place to shop, of course, a grocery store in Sherman Hill. Also one that gets a lot of its food from local sources. and a great cafe for breakfast, lunch, and supper. I also want to thank all of my other business supporters. I suggest folks you go to my website, look at the business supporters that I've listed there on the support page on fallonforum.com, and thank them for making the show possible. When we get back, Matt Sinovic with Progress Iowa is going to join us. We're going to talk about the agenda of Progress Iowa, and I've got to ask Matt about these new decals. And again, I got to ask why we don't have decals that fit on bicycles as well. But Branstead on board after the little, the model after the little baby on board decals. Brilliant. I want to know where that came from and what's happening with them. We'll be back in just a minute.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little, until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Well, good morning. This is the 7th of June in the Lord's year 2010, and this is day 1 of webcast1live.com. We will begin with Max World Live with my special guest, Tom Coates. In just a minute, there's Tom. Wait. Howdy. And we will be live for the very first time on Webcast One Live. Someday we're going to look back on this and say, gosh, remember that old day in history? Wonder where Walter Cronkite was. He must have been around hanging there too. But actually, it's the beginning of Webcast One Live. And thank you for listening. Thanks, Rob Spearman, and everybody who's put together this project together. And we're ready to go live now. So thanks for listening to MaxWorldLive.com.
I can't tell you that it's going real well from time to time, but it is going, man.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Just yesterday morning, they let me know you were gone. Suzanne, the plans we made put an end to you. I walked out.
Welcome back to the Fallon Forum. A little JT, a little James Taylor. I always love it when somebody says to me, hey, you look like James Taylor. I've had that happen a few times, Matt. Hey, you look like James Taylor. I said, well, I am James Taylor. I like to say. Just to see if I get a reaction, and usually that's about as far as I get. Yeah, no, I don't think so. Anyway.
Anyone ask for your autograph?
No, not yet. I would consider that if somebody asks me for an autograph, I will run the other way. First of all, I think that's a silly little practice we've developed in this country, and also my penmanship is really bad. So I would have to print my name. Then it would be legible at least. Hey, real quick here. Good news. There's always some good news out there, okay? We've talked before on this program about how elephants are at grave risk because of expanded poaching. I mean, there is reason to believe that they could be an endangered species. They could be extinct in the wild in the near future. And actually, there are countries, I believe maybe Mozambique, where that has already happened. But the U.S. government recently announced it would spend another $10 million. Again, not that much money, but something. An additional $10 million on efforts in Africa to protect elephants and rhinos and other wildlife. This is good. Zoos across the country are weighing in on this as well. I'd love to get. We're going to try to get the head of the Blank Park Zoo, Jesse Lowry, on this program to talk about that. Again, I've never been a huge zoo fan, but I'm much more of a zoo fan than I am a fan of extinction. And if zoos can work together with governments across the world to make sure we don't see such noble beasts, forced from their habitat and forced into extinction, that would be a good thing. Okay, speaking of good things, I'm not a big bumper sticker fan. I don't even have one on my car right now. I'm not sure. I think there may be too much rust on my car to even accommodate a bumper sticker, but where I would put one on my bike if it would fit. But I got to say, I really like when I heard about the bumper sticker that Progress Iowa had put out, Branstad on board, and then the subtext is something about I guess something to do with the speeding issue. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ed.
Yeah,
It says speed limits do not apply.
Oh, speed limits do not apply. Right. Okay.
Which, of course, is talking about Governor Branstad's.
There it is. Yep. Branstad on board. Speed limits do not apply. Well, of course, yeah. He's saying now that they will apply from henceforth, but you have to wonder why they didn't apply in the first place.
Yeah, which he hasn't addressed, which is probably the biggest concern. The biggest concern that we have about this issue is that in April, a trooper clocked his or saw the governor's SUV going what he called a hard 90, and then wanted to report it, did not report it, and then sort of reported himself for not reporting it,
which I thought was kind of gutsy on his part. Hey, I did the wrong thing.
Exactly.
but he doesn't get fired for doing the wrong thing. He gets fired for
doing the right thing.
For suggesting that he should have done more.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
For bringing it up. Yeah.
And so then, according to Larry Hedlund, the agent, the DCI agent that was fired last week, he was put under review just a few weeks after that incident happened, and now last week he was fired. So and he claims it was because he saw the governor's SUV going.
Well, it sure looks suspicious. It sure looks
absolutely
suspicious.
Does. Yeah,
and this is a story that's not going to go away. I've had people tell me. I mean, people who are very well connected politically saying this is not a big deal. It's gonna fade, but you just keep hearing about it, and then more and more things happen. For example, the governor basically saying, he talks about it at press conferences as well. He's doing his part to keep it alive. That doesn't seem real sharp. I mean, this whatever you can say about Branstad, he's tenacious. He's a great campaigner. He gets politics. Yeah. This seems like a really bad move politically to do anything at all to keep it alive.
It does, but it just seems, it just seems the whole situation is ridiculous. I mean, he had this press conference last week on Thursday, trying to put the issue to rest, and instead just kicked up more controversy about it because there was a 3-page memo that the agent that Hedlund released the day before about his firing. And then the next day, Governor Branstad called on Hedlund and his attorney to release this 500-page report that they were supposedly hiding, and they had never seen it before. So the governor called on him to release a report
that didn't really exist.
It may exist, but it does. But they've never seen it. So he just is just causing more and more trouble for himself.
Yeah. Well, and you're not helping either with these Branstad on board stickers.
Well, the idea is not to help. The idea is to the idea is to point out the hypocrisy of the situation.
How many of those have you given away or sold yet?
Well, we've given away. We have over 250 that have been requested or we've received donations for. I think we've raised just over $450 or almost $500 over the last few days.
And $3 for one of these stickers.
Yeah, that's what we're suggesting, and we really want to get the word out. So
before you leave, I'm going to give you at least. I'm going to buy at least one, probably
good.
several, and I'll find if I can't if it won't stick to my car. I'll find some carb that'll stick to. Anyway,
We can make a smaller version for your bike. Yeah.
And
How
again,
about
I
that?
don't think there's any risk of me actually hitting a hard 90 on my bike.
Right.
Maybe on a long stretch of mountain road.
Downhill.
Yeah.
Right.
But I doubt I can pull it off in Iowa.
Okay.
Despite my great biking finesse.
Yeah.
Anyway. It's not that great. All right, so what else is Progress Iowa working on? I mean, this is a little bit fun, a little bit funny, but also a good point about how out of touch the governor is with average people. But you guys are working on a lot of stuff that has some real solid substance to it as well. What's priority number 1 and 2 and 3 for you?
Sure. We have, well, as you know, our mission is to hold conservatives accountable, to sort of get the word out about stories and issues that don't always get focus or get the media's focus.
Right. And I would also hope that there would be a group out there on the other side holding liberals accountable.
I hope so
plenty,
too.
Plenty of that should happen as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And so a couple things that we have coming up are I'll be at the Bob Vanderplaat's Family Leader Summit again this year. That's on Saturday, August 10th.
You got an invitation?
No, I will. I'll be there holding them accountable for all the completely hateful statements that I'm sure will be made, as they were made last year, and the folks who attend, Ted Cruz, Rick Santorum, Donald Trump, the people who think that they need to come into Iowa and kiss the ring of Bob Vanderplaat's. Unfortunately, the national folks don't really realize how much influence he has lost over the last couple of years, and still see him as sort of the gateway or the main influencer in Iowa politics.
Yeah,
and to a certain extent he is in conservative circles, but
that's what I don't get. I mean, the ring that you said people come here to kiss is so tarnished. It's not going to draw a lot on the political market. I mean, this Vanderplaat's and his perspective have peaked. I mean, and just the best example you can provide is to look at the issue of marriage equality. I mean, they have hung their hat on that issue in opposition to it.
They've lost.
They've lost, and they're not done losing because we don't have full equality yet.
Right.
But it does not take a rocket scientist to look at the trend line and to see where we're heading. We are heading in the direction of full equality, not just here in Iowa. And again, we just took another step forward in Iowa with the conservative Supreme Court's ruling on DOMA. It does not take any level of brilliance to see where we're going.
Yeah.
And Bob Vanderplaat's and his type are going to be left further and further behind. And I don't see. Again, why is it that Ted Cruz and Rand Paul and others have not made that leap forward and realized, hey, this group is not where I want to align myself? Why have they not made that connection? Are they just really just not keeping up with the times, or what?
Well, I first want to say that while we can sit here with each other and say that we've won, and I agree that that's where the tide is turned, but that doesn't mean the fight's over.
No,
on
we're
this
winning.
Issue. So we are winning,
and
so that's important. I should say that, but also I think that they want to run for president. I mean, that's what they're doing. They're campaigning for president and using what influence they think or they believe that Vanderplaat's has, and in that very small sliver of conservative Republican Iowans, there's another a smaller percentage of that group who will follow him, till the time he exits the public stage.
Follow him to political oblivion.
Absolutely.
I mean, really, Kathleen Parker had, I thought, a really good column about this the other day. Maybe you saw it.
I don't.
GOP is waging a principled suicide. I thought she did. Let's see if you agree with her. She writes for the Washington Post. She's a syndicated columnist. She says Republicans seem to be adopting the self-immolation tactics of principled martyrs. Ouch. Of course, principled or not, you're still dead in the end. At this stage in the second term of the president they could defeat, Republicans seem more like stubborn children refusing to come out of their rooms for supper, even though the alternative is going to bed hungry. This simile is unavoidable in light of the House's passage, this is a good observation, I think, of a farm bill without any provision for food stamps. the first in 40 years. The move prompted fantastic outrage from Democrats, including Corinne Brown of Florida, who shrieked, "Mitt Romney was right. You all do not care about the 47%. Shame on you." Whether you look at that issue or how many times they've passed a repeal of the Affordable Care Act. I mean, we're going to talk about the Affordable Care Act later in the show. I'm not a huge fan, but just repealing it. How much they've tried to impede any attempts at immigration reform. I mean, this fringe, and I want to.
They've taken over. They've taken over the Republican Party.
But yeah, they have. But there is an element within the Republican Party that is growing, that is rebelling against this extremism, and they are going to eventually achieve power because this element is, as Parker points out, it's engaged in an act of political suicide. You can't win elections with this kind of demeanor.
I don't necessarily know that that's the case, and I'll tell you why. Really? I think that with the redistricting and the gerrymandering that you have seen across the country, they may not win a lot of national elections or any national elections with ultra right-wing conservative candidates, but what they will do is have a sizable number of members of Congress, because you see these congressional districts being drawn by Republican legislatures to hold power, and so these districts become more and more extreme, so that the primaries end up becoming the elections in which the members of Congress are actually elected. So they're going to have entrenched support across the country
who accomplish nothing and impede.
Absolutely. This is terrible for our national dialogue, for public policy. But I'm saying that I think it's going to take decades to turn that around.
No.
You have to wait for at least another session of redistricting, and hope that enough state legislatures adopt some sort of nonpartisan model, or don't have this mentality.
I'm not even a Democrat anymore. I'm so tired of the problems I see in the Democratic Party. But come on, I mean, compared to this fringe, the Republicans who right now are trying to move towards some agreement on immigration reform, on marriage equality, they seem extremely reasonable, and Democrats seem extremely reasonable in comparison.
Well, I agree with you. I'm just saying it's going to take a while to turn it around.
Again, there aren't that many districts in the nation where you will have where an extremist is sure to win. And I agree, there's been plenty of gerrymandering in a lot of states where you will have an assured victory by an extreme candidate. But there's not enough to fill the U.S. House. You can still envision. I mean, I envision it happening next year. I envision 2014. You'll come out of that election with a Democratic majority. It may not be anywhere close to being a progressive Democratic majority, but it might be enough just to stop some of the craziness and to begin to find some modest compromise, some common ground on some of these issues. Don't you think?
That may happen.
You're going to give it 2 decades?
That may happen. I think it's going to take at least 10 years for this to completely.
You just backed off 2. You're on 1 decade. I'm talking you down.
At least
half a decade. Can you give me half a decade?
No, I think it'll take at least till the next session cycle of redistricting, and that may not even be enough, because you'll have what you have now. What I would call the heart and soul of the Republican Party exists in that congressional House caucus. Folks like Steve King driving the conversation.
They represent the part of the Republican Party that is committing political suicide.
Right.
And the end result of suicide, as Parker points out, is you're dead and politically dead. And then something is going to fill that void, and it will be.
I hope so.
Yeah,
I hope that sort of unreasonableness does die.
It has to.
I saw a great just to talk about how full circle we've come. Today is Bob Dole's 90th birthday, and he was quoted. He was on Fox News actually a few months ago talking, and he was asked about how folks like himself or Ronald Reagan would do in today's Republican Party, and he point blank said that they would not have made it.
Right.
They would not have made it, and that the RNC should just put a closed for business sign up on their on their door. And this is Bob Dole, who ran for who's a legendary Republican.
See, again, I really don't get why these candidates are coming to Iowa, because it is really clear that the Iowa caucuses, at least on the Republican side, are pretty much meaningless anymore. I know Romney kind of won Iowa, but really Santorum did, and before that Huckabee. You have extreme candidates.
Both endorsed by Bob Vanderplatz.
Right, and
Santorum
both who
and
did
Huckabee.
really, really poorly in the general election.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Iowa, at least on the Republican side, has become meaningless when it comes to the selection of presidential nominees, let alone presidents. And I just don't see that getting any better this next cycle. But I think this will be the last time you see a far right-wing extreme candidate doing well in Iowa. It's got to change.
I hope that's true. The reason I think that they still think that there's influence in coming here this early and in doing well in the Iowa caucus, unfortunately, is because it drives the agenda.
Yeah.
When you have a Huckabee or a Santorum win that first in the nation caucus, their agenda then gets center stage. Whether whoever it is, then Mitt Romney or whoever the front runner is has to adopt at least pieces of that extremely conservative agenda, and then that sort of, what I would say, infects the rest of the race.
Hey, we got to run to a break here, Matt.
Yeah.
Actually, we're over time for a break because it's been such a stimulating conversation. I really enjoy having you on the show.
Thank you. Yeah, anytime.
And I'm looking forward to my Brand Stood on Board decal.
Yep, absolutely. I'll get you one.
Yeah.
One for your bike, maybe, too.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure where I'll put it. Hey, thanks, folks. We're going to be back in a few minutes. We've got a couple more issues to talk about. I've got to talk about the horrifying situation in the human services realm with the home in Toledo. I accidentally said Eldora earlier. The home in Toledo where young people have been locked up in rooms for long periods of time. I'm glad that has been brought to light by Clark Kaufman, and I think we will probably see an improvement. Again, bad news, but I think we're gonna see good news come out of that. I want to thank the Immigrant Entrepreneur Summit for sponsoring this segment of our show, and I want to thank all of my other business supporters, including Tally's Restaurant, Bar, and Catering, and the Story County Veterinary Clinic. I'll be back in just a minute as JT takes us out with a little more fire and rain.
Sweet dreams and flying machines in pieces on the ground. Whoa, now I've seen fire and I've seen rain. I've seen sunny days that I thought would never end.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live. of a new era begins. From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
That's Max Wellman, and we're back to our conversation here on the Fallon Forum. You should check out Max's website, maxwellmanmusic.com. His trio is something else, and they've got a lot of opportunities to enjoy his music here in Des Moines. One thing that I might tell you about too is Max is a songbook project. I get these in the mail every month. I'm a subscriber. It doesn't even cost that much, but every month or so I get a CD, and this is fun. It comes in the mail. I open it up, I pop it in my computer, and I've got all sorts of tunes. So it's called the Songbook Project, and I highly recommend you take a look at that and consider subscribing yourself. I think Brian Gillette is going to join us to talk about the Affordable Care Act. If he does not, we talk about it anyhow. But I got a few more things to get into as well. The one I want to talk about briefly during this segment of our conversation is the horrifying situation in Toledo. And I mistakenly, and I apologize to Eldora, I mistakenly mentioned the location as Eldora. No, I should know better. This is the Iowa Juvenile Home in Toledo. It was one of the few places when I was on the Human Services subcommittee, the budget subcommittee for years, I didn't have a lot of interaction with that facility. And now I'm kind of regretting that I didn't learn more about it. I mean, the DHS budget is so huge, you kind of take on a few things and do the best you can. Apparently, this home has confined teenage girls to isolation cells, small isolation cells, in one case for almost a full year. It sickened me to read that. Again, I want to commend Des Moines Register reporter Clark Kaufman for doing this research. Kaufman he's what a journalist should be, folks. Digging into problems that no one else wants to talk about, digging into them to the extent that you can really find out what's going on and initiate change. I mean, we saw that's what happened in Adalisa with the home for men out there that, I mean, just it resulted in a lawsuit, as it should have.
I know a girl who went to that Toledo.
Do you really?
Home, yep.
Did she spend time in one of these isolation cells?
I don't know. All I know is she did not exit better than she went in.
Yeah.
And so it might have something to do with it.
Yeah. Well, there's there's no doubt there are troubled teens out there, and we need strategies to try to help them get beyond their trouble. But is locking a kid up in a cell? I would go nuts. I can't understand how anybody thinks that is an appropriate treatment. And I've never been to the juvenile home. I've never seen this, but I saw the equivalent at the Mitchellville prison, the Iowa Correctional Facility for Women in Mitchellville. And actually the cells there were probably even smaller. Windowless, barely fit a bed in there. There were women who were put in there for ridiculous things, small little offenses that involved failing to do your laundry correctly, failing to do something correct with the food you were given. I mean, they were just silly little things that they ended up getting stuck in these isolation cells for. Again, for me, a day in there, and I would be thinking about going crazy a week, a month, in some cases a year. It boggles the mind that we somehow think this is acceptable. And apparently there were up to 57 youths with serious behavioral issues that received this kind of treatment. I don't get how anybody can think this is appropriate. I really hope the legislature, and I know there are good people in the legislature who will be concerned about this. Not just Democrats, there's Republicans as well. I didn't mean that as a partisan comment at all. I know Dave Heaton, for example. I imagine when he hears about this, he's a Republican from Southeast Iowa. He'll be concerned. He'll want to do something. What's shocking to me is the couple things: is the extent to which staff basically made jokes about this. You should check out the article in the Des Moines Register. It's pretty extensive and it's pretty disturbing. There was a slide taken for a staff party, and it showed two staffers looking over a list that read Fruit Loops, nuts, bananas, ding dongs, fruitcake. One of the workers was shown asking, grocery list? The other employee responded, no, caseload. All right, that's you can understand why you might want to vent a little bit privately once in a while, but to put that, on a slide and somehow think that's appropriate. There are heads rolling because of this, and that's not inappropriate. That should happen. And with that kind of insensitivity, yeah, that should happen. The other one to me was even more offensive, and this one is actually pictured in the newspaper. It shows a juvenile at the home with her face blacked out to protect her identity in an isolation cell, and in that cell with her is a skeleton. Now, it says Dr. Joan, who is the ex-principal, Joan Gerbo, the caption reads, she was supposed to assess this youth 3 days ago into her suspension. I guess she forgot. And that is like jokingly referring to the students' extended stays in isolation rooms. It is sickening. It really is sickening that this is happening. And this has happened for a while. We're going to talk more about this on this program because I think we have an obligation here to do our part to help move the state toward a solution on this problem. It's unconscionable. The other thing unconscionable to me, well, no, maybe unconscionable is the wrong word, but the other thing that's embarrassing about the DHS's role in this is the response from Chuck Palmer. Like Branstad, Chuck Palmer was the head of DHS when I was first elected to the legislature. This team goes way back. His responses to Clark Kaufman's questions about the children locked up in isolation for over 2 months, and one of them for close to a year. You should go online, go to the Register's website, and read the director's responses. Basically, he just avoids any substantive conversation about it. The only way he's going to get to talk about this substantively is if he's dragged before a legislative committee. And I hope the legislature does not wait till January to do that. I hope the legislature brings Chuck Palmer and the people involved with this practice before a special committee of the legislature as soon as possible. I think it's, I don't think, like some other stories we've talked about on this program, I don't think this one is going away because it is so offensive to our sense of what is right and what is just. And, I'm pretty sure that Clark Kaufman's not going to drop it either, but we're certainly not going to drop it here as well. Okay, I want to thank the Fighting Burrito for sponsoring this segment of our show. Fighting Burrito is both in Ames and Des Moines. In Ames, it's on 117 Welch Ave. Here in Des Moines, 13th and Locust. And again, a great place for a cheap burrito. One thing I like about Fighting Burrito, I finished a 32-mile bike ride yesterday, and there's not a lot of places open in downtown, but I could count on Fighting Burrito, and they were open. I want to also thank Ritual Cafe at the same corner. Ritual Cafe is probably where I'm going to end up for lunch. They're at 13th and Locust. And not just a fantastic place for coffee, tea, or smoothies, but you've got a great selection of paninis, and on weekends, music. I want to thank Sergeant's Garage at 6th and College, and also Dan Kelly's real estate business in Newton. I'll be back in a couple minutes. We're going to talk a little bit about healthcare, and I got a couple more issues to go over as well before we wrap up this segment of the Fallon Forum.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershad.
I'm administrative manager.
I'm the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
If we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, it's got to be, it's your home.
It's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's gonna be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, We guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you going to say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're going to be listening. They're going to want to know what your challenges are. Then they're going to come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me. But is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though. I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm going to take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Take to the highway, won't you lend me your name? Your way and my way seem to be one and the same.
James Taylor bringing us back, folks. Yeah. Take to the highway. Going to be doing that in a big way next year. Walking 3,000 miles of American highway. As me and other folks concerned about the climate change crisis are going to be walking across the country. Join us. Join us if you like. It's going to be quite an adventure, as well as hopefully a significant influence on the problem. As we know, we've got I've got a video. I'm not going to be able to share it today, but I'll share it with you tomorrow. It's about the Great Barrier Reef, and that's an area that has been very much impacted by climate change. But apparently, the new threat to the Great Barrier Reef, go figure, is U.S. jets accidentally bombing it. Just bizarre story there, folks. We'll probably throw that into tomorrow's mix. I do want to talk, the guest I had hoped to, the guest I should say, who had committed to joining us for healthcare today, a conversation on healthcare, no show. So not sure what that's about, but that does happen once in a while, and we just punt. I want to talk about another health-related issue, and that is food. My good friend Liz George likes to say that let food be your medicine and medicine your food. I believe she's quoting Hippocrates. But it's a good quote, and I live by it. I estimated the other day that I raise about a half a ton of food every year, close between my chickens and 1,000 square feet of vegetable garden, which is a lot, but is manageable. I raise close to a half a ton of food a year. That kind of boggled my mind, but I mean, the earth is good. A lot of, especially here in Iowa, the productivity of our soil is just astounding. And I was glad to see in today's Des Moines Register a story about how local produce is better for you, the environment. That's the title. Local produce is better for you, the environment. I was delighted to see that. And, we've got some great business partners in this program, like Gateway Marketing Cafe, that buy a lot of their food from local farmers, and Hawk Restaurant, where 90% of the food they serve at Hawk comes from local farmers and producers. Hey, you've also got Tally's Restaurant, of course, where Robert gets his bacon from up by Waterloo, a farm in Waterloo, and everybody who tries that bacon providing you are not a vegetarian, thinks it's really, really wonderful. So yeah, local does taste better, is better for the environment, and it's also better for us. And there's a good story about this. My problem is that the Register is they're doing a lot of advertising for Hy-Vee, and I do advertising. I mean, people do advertising with this show as well. My focus is strictly local. You got to be local to be on this program. Hy-Vee is kind of a hybrid. They're not Walmart. Obviously, there's connections to Iowa, but the local question kind of fudges a bit when you're talking about a regional chain, even if they are located in Iowa. So my concern about Hy-Vee goes beyond just that issue. It's the fact that politically they endorse a lot of the voices that are adamantly against some of the things that they now are subscribing to. Again, this is the story is by Hy-Vee's registered dietitian, and it's good information, but when you're Hy-Vee and you're also backing the Rush Limbaugh show, and I've heard Rush Limbaugh just come out, blasting the fruit and vegetable lobby, the all-powerful fruit and vegetable lobby. Like, give me a break. Like the fruit and vegetable, the horticulturists are going to go up against Farm Bureau and the corn growers and the soybean and the beef producers and somehow have their voices heard in the U.S. Congress? I don't think so. Despite that, because of the sense of switching to more organic products, more fruits and vegetables in your diet, we're winning some battles here. We're getting more recognition. And again, for example, in school lunches, fruits and vegetables are much more common in school lunches because of decisions made at the federal and local level. So good things are happening there. But again, I say, I'm glad this issue is getting some attention in the Register. I'm sorry that they have to connect it to Hy-Vee, and I'm sorry that Hy-Vee does not see any inconsistency with talking about their commitment to local produce and being more friendly to the environment while advertising on Rush Limbaugh, on Jan Michelson, on Sean Hannity. I mean, you could pick your advertising, your places to advertise better than that. And that's not an invitation to advertise on the Fallon Forum. No, to the Hy-Vee executive listening to this program right now, sorry. I've got standards. Anyway, so that's as far as we're going to get into the healthcare debate today, folks, because again, I had planned to talk about that, but our guest somehow stood us up. So hopefully we'll get him or someone else back on to talk about that, because the Affordable Care Act does have a lot of interesting features right now to talk about as the insurance exchanges happen, as Obama exempts businesses from one of the requirements, and individuals are saying, well, how come we don't get exempt from, for example, having to comply with the mandate and purchase health insurance by the end of the year? So, there's plenty of things to talk about. And again, I'm not a huge fan of the Affordable Care Act. I think the crazy talk, though, is from those who just want to repeal it without offering any substantive alternative. And by crazy talk, I mean Republicans in the U.S. House. I don't usually read Doonesbury because the font is so small that it's hard to read, especially when my eyes are still adjusting to the light on Sunday morning. But this week's Doonesbury, hilarious. Hi, folks, says the dude. Do you think that Congress has been doing squat this session? Well, then you're in for a big surprise. Fact is, your Republican House has voted to repeal or refund Obamacare 33 times. That's 33. So yeah, apparently they are doing something in the U.S. Congress, voting 33 times for the same measure that will go absolutely nowhere in the U.S. Senate and would obviously be vetoed by President Obama. But yeah, repealing Obamacare, not the way to go, but we should be doing something. And we should be maybe tweaking it. But again, I really think the solution has to be a single-payer system. And I would point out, I think we already have a single-payer system. It's called Wellmark, where 80% of all the insurance policies in the state are controlled by one company. Yeah, that's a single-payer system, just not the kind that I would envision, or the kind that most every other democracy in the world has for their people. All right, we've got to wrap up the show, folks. Back tomorrow with more conversation. I do want to thank Webcast One Live for sponsoring this show, for providing the studio for this show, and I want to thank my producer Maddie Arrington. I want to thank all of my business supporters as well. I want to thank the Sierra Club, the Physicians for Social Responsibility, and the Great March for Climate Action for being partners in this program as well. Again, I've got plenty of business supporters, about a dozen that I'd like to mention, but I'm not going to mention them all because you can go to my website, fallonforum.com, see who they are, support them, thank them for being a part of this program, and thank them verbally, but also through your patronage. They're doing their part to try to make an alternative, provide an alternative to Rush Limbaugh, to Jan Michelson here in the local community, and they need to be thanked and encouraged. Again, I want to thank Maddie Arrington, my producer, and I'll be back tomorrow on the Fallon Forum. Thank you also, James Taylor, for your tune taking us out of this conversation today.
Walking on a country road.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.